What's up everybody? Welcome back to Crawl TV and Happy New Year's. It is 2019. It's going to be a good year for us. I wanted to make this video to share a lot of information about what we had to do to get this Jeep fixed after we took it out to Hard Rock OffRoad Park and buried it underwater. Not cracking an egg in this video, it's actually going to be a little bit informative. Let's dive into what it took to get this Jeep from where it was, not running, to where it is now. So naturally, I'm very nervous driving this thing right now. I've changed the oil about 3 times, but it's still milky in there. I did check the transmission and it's not milky, which is great because chocolate milkshake and strawberry milkshake makes for a pretty lousy Monday. But I gotta get this thing fixed. The problem is there's so much mud on it right now that I can't really get to anything and keep it clean. So instead of going straight to O'Reilly Auto Parts, I'm gonna stop at a gas station, pull about 20 bucks out of an ATM, and there's a car wash like a block from the auto parts store, and I'm gonna go there first and I'm gonna clean this thing up so that when I work on it, I'm not working against myself by getting everything on the internal side of the engine covered in dirt. So that's where we're off to. We'll hit the gas station and then car wash and then O'Reilly Auto Parts. So I got the Jeep cleaned up, and now I can actually access the differentials because there was so much mud on them you couldn't even see them. We're outside of the O'Reilly's store right now. We're on the back side of it. I'm going to do another oil change now, and I grabbed something, which is Lucas Oil Multi-System Complete Engine Treatment. Now this not only works in your fuel system, but it also works in your oil. Add 1 ounce per quart of engine oil, maybe added with oil change or between oil changes. It comes in a 16-ounce can, so 6 quarts per oil change means 6 ounces. So I can get just over 2 oil changes out of this 1 can. And lucky enough, I got enough oil to do 2 oil changes here. I'm gonna do 1 right now, put some fresh oil and a fresh filter in it with this oil treatment. I'm gonna drive it for a few miles, and then I'm gonna come right back here and we're gonna do it again and see if that oil cleans up at all. Hopefully it does, because that's my first step before I go on to anything else. I wanna make sure there's no water in the crankcase because that's a major issue. And once we have that resolved, we can get into spark plugs and diffs and all that stuff, which is, in my mind, secondary to the engine, because I checked the transmission fluid earlier. It wasn't milky. The transfer case was above the water because it was, you know, kind of just dipped in the front end. And so that front differential, and I guess, you know, the right rear differential, or the right rear side of the axle were underwater. They may have gotten some water in there. We'll check those out as well, but we'll start with this oil change and see what we find. Wish me luck. Here we go. The car wash made a big difference because this was pretty dang dirty under here, and I just didn't want to get dirt in anything that I took apart underneath the hood. It kind of works against you. So I know this oil filter is going to be bad because it's the same one that, I mean, I haven't changed it at all. I've just only changed the oil. So it's going to be nasty. I got 2 sacrificial MicroGuard oil filters and O'Reilly's 5W30, just conventional oil. The reason I did that is because I don't need this for longevity. I just need it to cycle the oil. And actually, considering what it's been through, this filter looks pretty stinking good. I cleaned it out again this morning with WD-40. But I mean, obviously it's garbage. I'm just saying it looks a lot better than I expected. Let's jump under the Jeep and check out how that oil looks after 2 full oil changes. So when I drained the oil this morning, it only had like 3 quarts in it. So I took it, topped out oil off to where it was a normal level, and I ran it for about 5 minutes, shut it off and drained it. And it was absolutely horrible. I mean, it looked just like the oil we drained on the trail yesterday. So it would be very nice if I saw some kind of improvement now, because it's only got 15 miles on 6 fresh quarts. I'm expecting it to be milky, but hopefully not that bad. Oh yeah, that's looking way better. I mean, you can still see, I'll grab the camera and show you what it looks like as it's hitting that catch can, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. But you can see there's still some milkiness. It's not like clear yet. This is Pilot gas station oil, really high quality stuff. But yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, it's looking way better than it was. So, I mean, that's making me happy to see. Oh. And since it just came from the car wash, there's water dripping into the pan too, and that's what you're seeing there. So this is what I purchased, just standard 530 motor oil. It doesn't have to be fancy. And then we've got a MicroGuard oil filter here. And we're gonna use that Lucas fuel treatment as well. So as soon as that's done draining, we'll fill it up. These things can be kind of a pain to get to, especially like sometimes you get a round one, sometimes they have kind of a flat side to them. If you just put pressure on the sides and kind of squeeze it over to one side, which easier said than done, you see that it kind of gets a gap where you can pinch it and pull it down. It takes a couple times if you've got oil all over your hands though. There we go. Just like that. Now I'm not going to change the ring between every oil change, but I figured what the heck, it comes with one. So get that snapped in where it needs to be, right there, and we'll snap our new filter into it. Oh, and I cleaned all the milkshake that I could out of the cap, out of the oil cap, everything that I could. So there's a nice clean filter. That should be good right there. Wow, and actually that already took the milk out of the fill tube. That's impressive. Let's see what our Super Chips flash pack has to say. All right, let's see what we got. Multiple cylinder misfire. Lost comms with ECM PCM. Lost engine coolant message. Lost comms with HVAC control. Implausible brake signal. Lost comms. Lost comms. High beams. Comms with radio. High beam. Passenger door unlock lock. Circuit stuck. Lost comms, low beams, high beams. Oh my gosh. All right, here's what we're gonna do. I think a lot of that is because it was underwater. So we're gonna clear all the codes right now, and then we're gonna drive it for a few miles, and then we'll come back and we'll see what's coming back to us. Hopefully, like none of them, but if any, let's hope it's not that many. So I came all the way back to my apartment because I had to use the bathroom, and I figured it would be a good excuse to put some miles on this oil change. While we're here, my headlight is half full of muddy water, so went ahead and just unsnapped the top of the grill. Because I have a stubby bumper, I actually can't remove the grill because the grill touches the winch, so I can't pull it out. the only way to get the grill off on this Jeep is to unbolt the bumper and remove kind of the whole heavy assembly of bumper and winch. And realistically, you can get to your headlight by just popping the top here, and it takes a T15 T15 Torx to remove that. So we'll just pull this off here. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the headlights off first. I feel like that's a good idea, and then we'll get this water out. All right, guys, so I went back to the car wash, cleaned this thing some more, put a whole bunch of miles on it. I'd say probably 50 or 60 miles just driving around. I let it idle for most of the day while I took the headlight apart and dumped all the water out of it. And I'm at the point now where I still don't have a check engine light that has come back on. So I think things are getting better. I did have one blown fuse. It was a 5 amp fuse, and I didn't even look and see what it was for. I bought an assortment of fuses and swapped it in, and it was good. Still needs the spark plugs changed, transmission fluid and filter. Need to check the transfer case and diffs, but we're looking pretty good. It's running perfectly, starting up just fine. Everything's good, but I want to change the oil one more time before I end the day, and then this weekend when I have more time, I'll do all that other maintenance just to make sure we are 100% good. I'm not going to be driving this thing a whole lot this week, but yeah, just want to make sure that we're all good, because I'd hate for something to go wrong because I neglected it. So anyways, just one more oil change to do. Let's get started on that and just hammer it out, and then we'll be done for today, and I will post this video once all the maintenance is done. So see you in just a second. So I'll just start out by saying that we're not completely 100% done with all the maintenance. As you can see here, I actually still have one remaining oil change to do to take it back to the 530 synthetic Royal Purple that I run with a quart of that pure synthetic Lucas oil additive, just to help stabilize everything inside of the engine. The engine's running absolutely fine now, but our next step is going to be to do the transmission and transfer case. Now I've already checked the fluid in both of those, and it actually looks very decent, but since we're doing all of this work, it's better safe than sorry to just go ahead and take care of that. I'll drain all the fluid out of the transmission and change the transmission filter, and then do the same with the transfer case, just drain and replace that fluid so that we're all brand new as far as drivetrain goes, front to rear in the Jeep. Now, to get into the things that we have done though, you guys have seen that we actually made a full video on how to replace the spark plugs. I felt like that was pretty necessary after the engine was on its side. It looked like that PCV had ejected a lot of oil back into the intake, and you know, that obviously ran through the cylinders and stuff, and I don't have all the maintenance history on this Jeep because we bought it used at 50,000 miles, and we're closing in on 100,000 now. So with that said, the spark plugs are all done. It was a fairly easy job, but it did take a while. It's a little bit more in depth than your average spark plug change. Moving on to the next thing that we did though, we changed our air filter and cabin filters. I take that back, we didn't change them. We removed the air filter and cabin filters and we cleaned them. The air filter is really easy to remove. You just pull that cap off of the top of the air box there, and you can just take one flathead screwdriver on that K&N intake to pull the whole conical filter out. And then the cabin filters are really easy to remove. Once you have those out, all you have to do is spray them with cleaner and get them nice and saturated for a minute, and then spray them with water to clean them out. Now once they dry, the cabin filters can go right back into the Jeep, and the air filter just needs a light coating of oil around the outside of the filter, and then it can go back into place. The one thing that you want to be careful with on the K&N filters is that you don't want to spray oil on the inside of them, and you don't want to oversaturate them with oil, because that will get inside of the intake, and it'll get on your map sensor and your air intake temperature sensor, and you don't want those to kick codes or go bad because you over oiled your filter. So once that's all done, you just put the cap right back on that air cleaner box, and you're on to your next thing. Now the next thing for us was our differentials. I'll show you that video footage here. I'm gonna drain the gear oil. I'm just using the little drain hole in the bottom of it. If it looks like it's got water in it or anything, I'll pull the diff cover and clean it out before I fill it back up. But I usually only pull the diff cover about every other change unless I see something abnormal. This has the Royal Purple 7590 up front and in the rear. I'm gonna put 7590 back in the front and 75140 in the rear, because I do have a trailer hitch on this, and occasionally I pull stuff, just trying to take care of that rear end as long as possible. The next time that I change the gear oil will be a good opportunity to inspect the gears, make sure everything's all right, and hopefully the next time I pull the diff covers, I'll be re-gearing this thing because right now it's still got 410s in it. Without any further ado though, let's pull this drain plug and see how bad this gear oil actually is. All right, and that looks good. I mean, it's used gear oil, there's no metal shaving in it, and there's no water in it, which is the important part. So without those two impurities, I can go ahead and just drain all this out and fill it back up, and this will be a nice quick job. And I do, on this magnetic plug, I do have some very fine stuff, nothing that I wouldn't expect. There's nothing really concerning about what's on the drain plug. I don't see any actual metal chips. Just some gray. Which is the fine metal shavings that come off of the gears as they wear down. All right, now we're gonna pull this top and bottom plug here on the diff cover. We'll fill up to the bottom one until it's right at that level, plug it, and then just add a couple of extra squirts to the top, plug that one back in, and we can move on to the rear end. There we go, and this is all the way up to that fill hole now, so we'll plug it. Just for safe measure, I'll swap the cap and just give this one a little bit more. Okay, and that should be good. You don't want to overfill your diff because that can aerate the fluid inside of the diff and actually make it less effective than if you had underfilled it. So we don't want to do that. We just want to add a little extra because this is a high pinion axle. The aftermarket diff covers do give you the option for that, and it's especially important in the rear with that pinion angle at a much higher level than it normally is. In the front, you sacrifice pinion angle so that you can have caster correct. In the rear, you don't really have that issue, so you angle the pinion where it needs to be. And that puts the pinion higher up, so you need a little bit more oil. Let's move on to the rear. We'll get these plugged up, and then we can kind of, I'll put the closed cap on the bottle that still has fluid. And I'll just keep this remaining gear oil in my trail bag, since you guys know that I was a little bit underprepared on the last wheeling trip when I needed all that oil and didn't have it. So I am gonna make sure to pack it in the future. All right, and the rear axle did have water in it, and it's got substantially more metal shaving as well. That's not good looking. I'll show you guys that drain plug so you can see all the metal shaving on it. That is not cool. So there are metal flakes in this one. The oil was watery, and that's not a good sign. We'll get in touch with our friends at Nitro Gear and Axle and see what we can find as a solution to this. But it looks like it's time to re-gear because that is not happy gear oil. That's not a normal amount of metal shaving. And that, yeah, it's just not good looking. That is not good. So we're gonna pull the diff cover on this one, and we're gonna clean that rear diff out because clearly there's quite a bit of water in that, and I don't want it everywhere else in that rear axle. So we'll pull it, we'll spray it out, and then we'll put new oil into it. And this will also be a good opportunity to inspect the gears and just see how torn up they are, because clearly this oil hasn't been lubricating properly if it's got water in it, and those gears may have eaten themselves up a little bit. All right, well, I got this thing fully cleaned out. I cleaned up the diff cover as well. It's got this lube locker gasket on it, which is reusable, so I don't have to use RTV when I put this back on. Ooh, I do need to kind of clean up the edge a little bit more there. We're gonna get these parts thrown back in, put new gear oil in this thing, and then we're just gonna plan on getting some new gears for this thing because I don't really want to risk it, but we'll get some new gears. But for the time being, we're gonna throw the diff cover back on, fill it back up with fluid, and at least it'll be a lot happier than it was for now. Now let's get to filling this thing up. We're gonna use the 75-140 just to give a heavier weight oil to this thing. You may have noticed in my last video of how we drowned the Jeep that I said heavier oil makes up for loose tolerances. And since this thing has shaven some metal down, that's pretty much what my aim is here. So we're gonna use the Royal Purple 75-140. We'll start in this lower hole and just fill her on up. Okay, we filled to the first fill hole now. So we'll plug that and give her some more. Right. Okay. Cool beans. Let's clean it up. So that's where I'm at right now. I just finished up on the differentials. That rear end was a little bit nasty, so I'm a little bit concerned about it. I might be making another video soon called how to re-gear your JK because I think it's probably gonna need it. And these are 410s and I've got 37-inch tires anyways, so it's an incorrect ratio. I'm gonna call up my good friends over at Nitro Gear and Axle and see if we can work with them to get a new set of 538s, because 37s might not be as big as we go on these little JK44s, unfortunately. I don't really have enough money for 1-tons, but I do have the desire to run bigger tires and maybe lower this Jeep down 1 full inch and go with a long arm kit. So that's kind of my plans for 2019. You guys might also recall that this headlight was half full of mud, and that one was only working about 30% of the time. In the video where we swamped this Jeep underwater, I actually had to hit the headlight so that it would turn back on.
The light's on now, but this one doesn't work.
That's fine.
The one's flooded, one's broken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one that's
Watch
flooded
this,
is
watch this, ready?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Chinese.
Yeah, no shit. There it goes.
Crazy.
Now that's because we were running those Oxbeam H13 LED headlights, and my review on those is that they are not that great. This thing right here, this little Oxbeam H13, pure garbage. Don't care about it anymore. One of them made noise for a long time before it quit working, and they just weren't that great. They flickered a lot. It was super white, bright light. I could tell it was distracting other drivers, and so I decided to just go back to some Sylvania H13 halogen bulbs, and I put halogens in both front headlights. That completely fixed our problem. I threw those Chinese LEDs in the trash, and in the near future, Grace and I will be looking into replacing the headlights entirely with something a little bit more of a higher American-made quality. So we'll see what 2019 has in store for us, but I think new headlights are gonna be on our list. Now, I don't know how well you guys can actually see this from this point of view, but Grace and I replaced all 4 brakes on this Jeep while we were underneath it. We had to rotate the tires anyways, and we had a new set of brakes because we have about 50,000 miles on the old brake set. So we decided that once we had the tires and wheels off, we would just replace the brakes anyways. Now, I had a pretty serious pull to the right, and I was getting a lot of brake noise out of the left front, so I knew I had to inspect them anyways. But what we actually found was that the left front caliper pin bolt had come out of the caliper and the caliper had rocked back, so it was actually cutting itself into the wheel a little bit, which is a pretty serious problem. So one of the reasons that I'm changing the brakes is because I was getting a lot of noise out of my left front end. And this is the first time that I've been able to inspect it, but look at what's going on. I'm actually missing a caliper pin bolt, and the caliper has touched the wheel a couple times, and even better, the pad on the inside has dropped down and in a little bit. So Got a few things going on here. Wow, look at that. Guess I better find another bolt. And the driver's side rear had Monroe brakes on it. They weren't power stop because after Trail to SEMA 2017, I bent a flange on one of my rear axles and I drove it like that for about 10,000 miles. And with that caliper following a bent flange back and forth, I eventually seized the caliper, smoked it up, and I had to replace it. So I only bought one rotor and a set of pads just for that one rear corner because I knew that eventually I would just replace all four with a PowerStop Z36 truck and tow kit. All of my tools were underwater. How about a box cutter though? Yeah, the toolbox still has like an inch of water in it. I gotta clean it out. Pads don't look too bad. They still have plenty of life in them. So, I mean, I could have easily gone another 30,000 miles on these. Let's pull, I mean, we're gonna pull everything apart, but we'll pull the caliper bracket off for now. Grace is gonna run to O'Reilly Auto Parts and pick up some more Loctite for us. So we're gonna do everything that we can without needing Loctite. And then when she gets back, we can wrap it all up. This brake job isn't taking very long though. I'm kind of breezing through it because I'm not recording everything. We have a PowerStop brakes video. I'm just replacing them and then I'll share my opinion on what I think after 50,000 miles. These brakes are so nice, and there's a big difference between a 50,000 mile set and a brand new set. This Jeep once again stops on a dime, even with 37s, and it's such a comfortable feeling knowing that for just a few $100 you can actually get a performance brake kit for a Jeep like this that's going to keep you safe on the roads, because with this amount of unsprung weight, these tires are ridiculously heavy, but these brakes can lock all four of them up and I can come to a safe distance stop whenever I need to, which is pretty invaluable for safety purposes. So, what is next for us? What do we have left on our list? I told you guys that we have the transmission, the transfer case. I'm about to knock out my final oil change right now. And then the last things that we have on our list is we got a new set of tie rod ends for our Synergy steering setup. I've ripped 3 of the 4 boots down here, and one of them is a new boot that I replaced a few months ago. So what I'm gonna do is replace all the tie rod ends. With them lacking grease for that long, I'm expecting that the tie rod ends are pretty worn out anyways. So I got in touch with Synergy. They got those out to us and I have them now in the apartment. So on one of our next videos, I'll show you how to replace the tie rod ends in the front end and then align your steering. After that, we have a seat recline kit that we would like to put in. I'd like to show you guys our touchscreen radio. We've had it for about 9 months now, so I have a pretty well established review on what I think of that. I've also had a lot of questions about this K&N snorkel setup and what we think of it after drowning it underwater. Clearly we didn't have the plugins, so that was our bad, but I did recently run a test and I'll share that video with you guys soon on what I think happened and why we didn't hydrolock the motor. A good friend of ours, Doc, the one that actually won our license plate in our giveaway video, did the exact same thing that I did about 2 weeks after I did it, and he fully destroyed his motor. So what happened to him and what happened to us, and why was there such a big difference? We are running absolutely fine now. The Jeep has had a few flushes of the oil. I'm doing a final one now, but everything seems to be back to the way it was before we went into that water. So there's some different plumbing involved with this snorkel, even without the plug in it, and I'll show you guys how that works because it's really interesting. Essentially, there's a one-way valve and a whole bunch of piping behind the fender, and if you pour water directly into the inlet duct, it doesn't go into the intake. You can hold a garden hose into the inlet duct, and it's not going to go into the intake. So I'll show you guys how that works in an upcoming video. I also want to share with you guys our new 67 Designs products. We got a new double ball base mount, and it's got a magnetic holder and our aluminum squeeze mount side by side, so Grace and I can both mount our phones while we're driving, which is going to be a huge benefit to us because right now with those squeeze mounts, I've got a really good aluminum one on the driver's side, but on the passenger side, I've got that plastic one, and it's just not that great for Grace's phone, so look out for that. I'll show you guys that as well. And then that essentially wraps it up for my to-do list for now. I'm sure there are more things that will come down the line, so you're just gonna have to stay tuned and see. But the Jeep is fully back to normal. As soon as I get that transfer case and transmission flushed, I'll share that footage as well. I hope you guys all have a wonderful 2019. Today is day 1, and I've got high hopes for this year. So we'll see how everything plays out. My plan for the Jeep is hopefully to get it on long arms and 40s, maybe even some 1-ton axles. I know we're going to be doing some new armor upgrades, possibly fenders, rocker skins, rocker armor, maybe even a front and rear bumper. I do like this JCR dagger stubby front bumper a lot though, so we'll see if we replace that, especially since we had to do the frame chop on it. It is kind of a unique setup up there. Anyways, guys, that wraps it up for this video. Please subscribe to the channel, turn that little bell on for notifications, and follow us on other social media channel platforms like Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. Check out our RevKit page. It's revkit.com/crawltv, and you can see every single mod that's on this Jeep. Those RevKit pages are super cool. It's essentially the new Instagram for Jeeps. Really, really like it. And if you don't know, we do have a Patreon account. It's called patreon.com/crawltv. Go check that out. I'm not asking you to pay money to subscribe, but if you see what we're working on and you want to help us out because this is crazy expensive, please feel free to do so. And go get your decals at 7slotsociety.com. That's all I have to say. That wraps it up. We will see you guys on the next episode of Crawl TV, airing weekly. I'm out. Bye.